Right there on the desk. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now open the public hearing on resolution number 2024-R06, resolution of the City Council of Townsend, Montana to adjust rates for the users of its water system. I would remind all of you that this meeting is being recorded and therefore please speak up. When you wish to speak, please address the chair, which would be me, and I will call on you. With that, I do have a letter from a resident regarding the water rate increase that I will read now. This is from Isla Adams. I'm extremely concerned about this increase, as I'm sure many elderly are. Charging everyone the same is totally unfair. It is not discriminatory to give those on fixed income a discount. The state does it for property taxes, and I feel you should follow the same ruling. I do not have auto sprinklers and only do about 3 loads of laundry per week. I see elderly neighbors with auto sprinklers running, pouring down rain when I don't have to water for 3 days. I see another elderly neighbor with a home setting on 3 lots, auto sprinklers running. Both of those have 2 people in their homes. What about home with 2 adults both working, 2 to 5 children and a lawn? Hardly the same as 1 elderly adult. Now that is discrimination. Last year, my homeowner's insurance went up 167%. Finally negotiated it down to just over 100%. My property taxes doubled. My TV, internet, and electric went up, not to mention the cost of food and gas. I received a 3.2% increase, $43. Where are we supposed to come up with more funds? The only fair way to solve this is metered service or same discount as state property taxes. You could ask to see the letter the state sends out each year to individuals. Is there other public comment?
I agree with that. I'm on a fixed income.
Please state your name for the
My name is James Tillman.
Thank you.
I'm retired on a fixed income, and this is going to be a pretty good bite out of my income. It's when it's going to be a situation of drink or food, drink or eat.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Nobody else got nothing
Oh, go ahead. I'm Shirley Wilson, and I have some questions.
What are we paying for? I don't see anything anywhere that you hear that the water system is going to be improved or upgraded or whatever. Is there any water at the fairgrounds? You've drilled multiple tanks out there. Is there water? What are we paying for? Is this down the road? Is that now? Is it what?
In 2022, City Council approved to move forward with a preliminary engineering report on the water system to address two primary issues. One of which is the amount of water storage that we currently have. The water tower holds about 250,000 gallons of water. Current Department of Environmental Quality standards for a community of our size recommends 1 million gallons in storage. The other issue that this water system is to address is the varying water pressure issues that many of our residents, particularly on the south side of town, are experiencing. In addition to these two issues, there are a number of fire hydrants in the city that do not work. They are so old that we cannot get replacement or parts for them. We cannot repair them. There are also not enough valves in our water mains. So for example, on North Pine, is that correct, Eric? On North Pine, if a break happens in that line, the entire 6 blocks, I believe, needs to be water shut off for that entire block, 6 blocks, until the break is fixed. So water, additional valves, and increased water storage, water pressures, fire hydrants. That's what this will pay for. The water storage, the new tower, will go up east of the fairgrounds on property that the city owns.
Is there a water source at that point?
We will pump the water from our existing wells up to that storage and then gravity feed back into town. And the reason for that is because we're in the middle of water rights adjudication, as several of you are as well. And at this time, it's better to maximize the water rights that we have with our existing 3 wells until the water rights adjudication that would impact the property east of town is finalized. Yes, sir.
Jake Ballou from Lakeside Distillery. So, the total project cost was what, 17 million?
Approximately. That is the current estimate.
Current estimate. How much of that is just in the piping and installation of that water tower 400 feet outside of town? Is there?
Yes, here are the engineering reports that are available to be reviewed by the public.
And then with that whole project, we're understanding that the current water tower staying in place for the time being.
The current water tower will remain in place. It will not be in use. It will be drained and maintained because it won't work in conjunction with that new water tower.
Why can't you run a shut off and separate it and still fill that one if you're gonna do piping anyways?
The engineering report said that it wouldn't work. I'm not an engineer. We've contracted with an engineering firm to do these studies. There were several options presented to council that included water towers within the city limits. And if we kept the current tower in use, an additional tower couldn't be any higher than the current tower. And that didn't solve our water pressure issues. Yes, Councilman Howard.
If you don't mind, but a brief moment. The basic physics is this: if you put in a tower that has a higher pressure and try to keep a tower at a lower pressure in service, all you're doing is pushing water into that lower tower. Nothing ever comes out of it. That means that the lowest pressure tower limits your total pressure, period.
Well, what I was saying was if you have that as a backup. So if something happened. You had an issue, that we still have water here in town with the existing tower.
That's an interesting future consideration, but at the moment, that would be an additional cost.
You leave that water in that tower and sits there for 5 months. Very good. Hopefully you're not gonna put it in someone's house.
Thanks, Mike. That's a good point.
That's not gonna work.
Thank you. You have a question?
Yes,
Your name for the record,
so
please.
my name is Carolina Blue and I'm also with Lakeside Distillery. So with the potential options to upgrade this and include whatever else is needed here, were there considerations of a phased approach? So to do some part of this and then do whatever else is needed for the city for consideration of the cost to citizens?
I don't believe that was specifically considered as council was considering the preliminary engineering report and the options provided through that. Council believed that it was important to include all aspects of the water system in the project. Piecemealing it increases costs.
I understand that. Was there, an analysis done based on the local citizens, their level of income and how it would affect them? So like looking at general income with like the 2020 census data, where the median people fall, what's below the median, what's above, what percentage of the average income this would be for people paying for this?
That would have been outside the scope of an engineering report, which was, we contracted for that to solve the storage issues, water pressure issues. People frequently call here to complain about their water pressure. And the public safety factor from the perspective of fire hydrants. And then the balance. And the preliminary engineering, the initial estimate 2 years ago was significantly less than what it is now. As I'm sure we're all aware, construction costs have gone through the roof to the point where some of us can't afford the roof.
So this sounds like it's not a new issue. This has been ongoing in building. So has there been budget that's been set aside or allocated towards this?
Historically, I will answer that. Historically, your elected officials took great pride in the low rates that the residents paid and didn't necessarily pay attention to future replacement costs of these systems. In essence, the can was kicked down the road for years, and here we are. The impetus for that preliminary engineering report was actually a fire that occurred in Denton the end of November 2021. A down power line, I believe, sparked a grass fire. Winds were at about 65 miles an hour, and there was no snow on the ground. The crews went out immediately to start fighting that fire, and the fire kept jumping around. It eventually reached a trellis bridge that they couldn't stop the fire from getting into that. The sparks then flew through the air and landed into the grain elevators. The town lost 4 grain elevators, and I don't know how many ton of hay that was stacked nearby. As the grain elevators were burning, those sparks flew up and went and hit various houses. The town lost 25 houses in addition to those grain elevators. In the middle of all of that, Northwestern Energy contacted the city and said, we're going to have to shut off the power. The city no longer had water available to fill the trucks, so they started filling from it. That information was brought to the attention of council. And we said, you know what, we have grain elevators. They're right over there. We have fertilizer right over there. We don't have enough water in storage to fight significant fires. This past January, I think it was, we had a house fire here. And our public works director was particularly nervous about whether the fire hydrants would continue working, whether the water would continue flowing. We also had another house fire out that direction just a little while ago. The proximity of those homes, and that could have been a disaster. There. So all of those factors led council to decide to move forward with the water system. Yes, sir.
I don't think anyone's arguing that the water system is in severe disrepair and needs to be worked on. Again, we're a distillery, we use a pretty decent amount of water. No one's in tune with the water of this town more than we are. You see my water filtration system, you know that. I think a large part of why I'm sitting here, why we're sitting here, is that it doesn't really seem to me that there was a lot of effort put into place into getting this done, but actually in a really fiscal responsible way. $17 million is a lot of money, and putting in 8,400 feet of 16 to 18-inch pipe, that's a lot of money. How can that be? How could you save that? You could put it closer into town. I understand the thoughts of the town may expand there, may expand here, may do this, but it's not currently. We need to address central here first. And I mean, I'm going to say something that not a lot of people are gonna like, but if a water tower isn't usable, then why is it standing? Eventually, one day that water tower will have to come down. It's just a structural inevitability. It has to. We're lucky has stood as long as it's had because of our climate. I mean, that's really what's helped us out. So, like, going through here again, it's kind of hard to go through, 1,000 pages of stuff in about a minute and a half. But was there, who made the decision on, we're going to put this 8,400 feet outside of where it's going to connect into the main line?
City council weighed the options presented by the engineering firm and made the decision that the site outside of town was the best option. One of the alternative sites was Holloway Park, where the new skate park is. And that tower would have had to have been, I don't remember exactly how much taller than the current tower, would have essentially taken up the rest of that park. And the people who live around there would look at a water tower. And if council at that time felt that destroying one of our city parks wasn't in the best interest of all the residents.
So those are the only two options.
No, there were other options available. If you'd like to look at that preliminary engineering report, we can provide a copy of that to you.
I would.
So what is the lifetime of this increase? So what is that projected to be?
The system, the funding is coming from a variety of sources. The bulk of it, a loan that will be backed by bonds that will be issued through a program that the Department of Environmental Quality and Department of Natural Resources and Conservation manage together. It's called the State Revolving Fund. And that money is there to be loaned out to municipalities for water and sewer systems. The estimated loan at this time from that program is about $14 million, if I remember correctly. So the water rates have been estimated to cover operating expenses and then to pay off those bonds over 20 years.
Will be good.
So right now, this is 20-year increase that's projected.
At which point in time during the course of this, the funds also provide for the creation of reserves for future repairs and replacements. And in a perfect world, if the current if the economy remains stagnant, prices stay the same, incomes stay the same. Once those bonds are paid off and we no longer needed the required reserves with respect to bond payments, you could anticipate that water rates would come down. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know what's going to happen in 20 years.
Another question is that as the preliminary engineering report was prepared, and here we have this bid, was any of this
That is not a bid.
No, this is the big document.
so I stand corrected, but as this was all prepared, has this been synthesized down in some type of fact sheet to give to the regular person to understand the options and what this actually means?
We have not synthesized that. The engineering company, the engineering firm did provide a spreadsheet that provided various funding scenarios with proposed rate increases. Council selected a rate increase that we, at this point, that it hopes will cover the costs. Right now, we have an estimate of this project. We don't know where the bids will come in.
So this is what I would say as someone who's worked in state government, has worked for DEQ and works for EPA. An expectation is that if you have this type of information that's very technical, the common person isn't going to understand it. And then it's your job as elected officials to synthesize that and make sure the local community does understand what they're being asked to invest in. And based on the turnout today, it seems like the local community doesn't fully understand that. I'm not saying right or wrong, but I'm saying it's not clear.
Certainly.
At the time this was all being discussed, I wasn't on the city council. I was one of the few people that bothered to come to city council meetings on a regular basis. There were lots of discussions. We spoke with the engineers. They were made very clear what the options were. I had no problem understanding what the city council was being asked to do. We're being a little bit unfair looking 2.5 years after the fact and complaining that what was clear during that lengthy process that included many meetings, great deal of communication and lots of notifications, that today, the people who weren't involved at that time or chose not to be involved at that time are now being asked to do something. Yeah, I guess we're asking the community that couldn't be bothered to come to all those meetings to trust us that we actually did a good job, those members of the council that were there at that time. That sounds a little ruthless, but there's a responsibility here that needs to be shared. Sure, the city council should be providing a document, as you're asking, that's helping people to understand what they're paying for. People should be participating in their government. It's been 2 years. Where was everybody 2 years ago?
That's a little insulting, honestly. Okay, because
Yeah, I agree
again,
that it was.
we're tax.
Going to ask you to please address your comments to the chair.
Okay, I apologize. So again, I find that statement to be rather insulting because it's, again, we're business owners, we still work full time. Like we're trying to build something. Again, you guys know what that building looked like when we started and then we're still working on. Okay, so it's not like, you know, we just kind of throw away our time and we have all this extra time. We're out there having a good time, but we're not. Okay, we work a lot. Okay, what we're trying to say is we're sitting here at a meeting for a rate increase. We're asking, what are we paying for? And you can't give us the answer to that. What is the itemized deduction of this potential estimate of $17 million? What specifically is that money paying for? At this point, none of you can tell us what that is. That's disappointing. And then where was there efforts taken by the council or said engineering firm to work towards some cost saving options or method so that the citizens of Townsend within the city aren't immediately taking this huge burden? There should be a rate increase. There should have been a rate increase 10 years ago. I mean, that needed to happen. But to say that we're sitting here and we're the delinquent ones in our civic duty, that's a little bit, that Denton fire, I fought that fire. Like, I was there, I know exactly what it looked like. Like, again, it's, that was a pretty insulting thing to say to someone who's sitting here and just trying to be better informed of decisions that are being made with the money that we're paying. And a significant amount that's coming up.
My name is Heather Haley, and I would like to just make some comments in regards to what I'm hearing. So, what the city of Townsend, what we are all going to be paying for is as follows. The water infrastructure of this town is outdated and it needs serious repair. That my understanding is elected officials previous to the people in front of us kind of just pushed it under the rug and was like, we'll deal with that later. Well, now we have people that care enough that we're going to deal with it now. An estimate is not a final number. Bids can come in less, they can come in slightly more. What we are going to be paying for is updating and repairing the water infrastructure that we all need to live. And by living here, it is our responsibility as citizens of this town to help foot the cost. The water tower that will support us all with better water pressure, enough water to sustain all of us. And if we have fire hydrants in this town, I'm a safety officer in my job. If we have fire hydrants in this town that doesn't work, I have a serious problem with that. And will gladly figure out a way to take on the rate increase simply for our safety in this town. We have a giant wildfire not very far away from here. And if it comes this direction and we can't fight it, we will all have a big problem with that, I feel. So I understand the frustration. Everything is expensive right now. You know, the last 3, 4, 5 years have been pretty rough on all of us. Wages haven't increased that much. However, we need water to live. We need water to be safe. We need water for our animals, our crops. We have to figure out how to get it done. Bottom line.
Yes.
My name's Phil Moles. And I'm curious to how much it would, the difference of cost if you put it in that park over there where the skate park is. Versus the spout here that's so far away. When you only gotta go from there to there.
We can get that for you.
I mean, if there's that much difference and it saves us a bunch of money, it keeps going up. I don't get, my wages do not go up. I'm on Social Security. So they stay, whatever they decide to give me, I get it.
The information that I will be able to provide you on the difference in the cost estimates would be those estimates developed 2 years ago. Once council made the decision to put the new tower outside of town, we didn't ask the engineering firm to continually update cost estimates on those other options. So you would be getting outdated information if that's what you want.
No, I don't, but I was talking about whether you have the difference between putting it way out there or putting it over here. There's gonna be a big difference in cost. A big difference. Oh, yeah. You tell me you're running pipe from there to there and you're running.
There's a
There,
difference,
there.
sir, but it's not quite as large as you think. You have to put in a large tower.
I
to
understand.
pressure.
So you put in a large tower, that's what you're talking about. It would take up that area over there. It's a park. I'm sorry, it's a park. But
Co-signer, I have a really naive question, but if it goes into the park, it's not gonna be gravity fed anymore, correct? And that might be what's causing it to be a little more cost effective.
Still be gravity fed. The height of that tower would destroy any scenic views that are.
So that's all the reason.
And that it's, that park has the skate park in it. It's where ice skating rink has been put in the past. It's where I believe soccer is played. It's a multi-use park. And the council believed that it was important to maintain that open space within the jurisdiction within the city itself.
And then it's probably still gonna have to rip up more ground because we're gonna pipe underneath. One that's gravity fed, because it comes down and then it's piped, water pipes are underground.
Will feed into the state, into
The
the
city-
city's
water.
water mains. That need to be maintained. Additional valves for.
Have one there.
Yes.
So a little bit of information I know, I'm new on the council too. The best wells, and Eric can maybe concur this, for water are in town, correct? Most water we have is in town. It was a couple of years ago, maybe not that long ago, there was $3 million less money estimated to go out there to the fairgrounds versus building it in town. To pipe that, you have a very good source, and you know who I'm talking about, who was involved in all that. So, and again, I'm speaking a little bit out of having all the information. So you're right, we have to have all the information, or guess what? We're gonna pay the same as everybody else. And it's an overdue situation, and it's unfortunate, but it's a necessity. Unfortunately, an absolute necessity, your point, Heather, has to happen. And there was a lot of time and energy that I'm not even aware of, from the engineers, from the council, from bids to, we're still in bidding processes and revisiting bids. It's not like someone just woke up one day and said, we should build a $17 million water tower. That's not how it works. It sucks for everything. For the council too. We're not exempt from any of it. We're just like sitting on this side of the fence. So, we as a community just have to somehow wrap our minds and arms around this. We ultimately have to make the decision and try to do as best we can to get that. And unfortunately, it's a painful one. And we're trying to backtrack a little bit from years ago, whatever that is, and that's can't do anything about what happened yesterday, last week, last month, last year, 5 years ago. It's all water in the bridge. But we know the necessity of the new water system is inevitable, and the growth of Broadwater County, Townsend. I mean, we're Townsend, but county, we're all. It's gotta happen. It has to happen. And if someone has a better idea on how to fund that, we're all ears, trust me. And there's a lot of grant money, there's a lot of federal money and state money that I'm not even aware of that goes into this. And no, we don't want to go to the city of Townsend. Folks, sorry, we're gonna have to raise your rates. It's not it's benefiting us for all the reasons that you explained, for water pressure, fire protection, for families, for houses, for everything we do. Water is one of the most precious commodities in the world, and it's going to get more precious every single day because we know it in the world, not just in Townsend, Montana. And we all know, for those of you who don't know, Southern Broadwater County is a bone dry of water. Northern Broadwater County is not far behind it. So the water's availability is getting less and less, and it's harder to get. Unfortunately, it costs a lot of money. It is a lot of money. So.
There are other public comments. Yes.
This summary that we received. The maintenance terms that they're looking for. That is the item that would not be another.
If you would hand that to Harry. Yes, ma'am.
I just was wondering
Your name for the record.
if Sue Fairchild. I'm curious, the lady that the letter you read mentioned pagers. You know, that would that be cost effective with that? I know it would add to the cost of upgrading the system, but that might be the fair way to go for elderly and users. I don't know, but was that research? And another idea I had was like, could the old water tower be, like not attached to the new system, but used for fire protection, like Heather was concerned about if it was filled and used to feed the highlands? You know, it's a 3% of the water that maybe we could use out of the system. Just for fires. I don't know, cause I haven't looked at the report or anything, just thinking.
I believe the fire hydrants are attached to the water mains, and so you'd be introducing potentially stagnant water into the water mains. And how could you make sure that that water came up through the pipe? Once it's in the water main, it's
Well,
all
that's what I don't know,
right.
you know, is my kitchen sink getting filled with the same water that the hydrants are?
Yes. Yes. As to metering, current city ordinances provide for residents to have the option of installing a meter. Has to meet the city's standards. It's done at the resident's cost. Once you go to a meter, you don't go back. And frankly, your risk is that you could very well be using a lot more water than you think you are, and your water bill will go up.
Maybe if
Some
I'm
people-
on, but maybe Ethel's not, or whatever her name was. You know,
And
maybe an
there-
elderly person is not,
And there would be a base charge,
so that scratch that.
it is an option available to the residents of Townsend.
Wouldn't make sense if it was a city. I don't know.
Other comments?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Jim Tillman,
Thank
I'm just kind of curious, was it considered or is it inconceivable to put a tower up where across from the courthouse and then just switch them over and take the old one down?
The county owns most of that park.
Won't give it up, okay.
County property.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Other public comments? Yes.
Shirley Wilson, I have a question, I guess. Was it ever considered to move that water tower closer to town? I realize you own the property where it is. But like you said, 8,400 feet uphill, cross a highway and a canal, and then come back to town. Was there any consideration given to property closer to town so you could cut some of those and still get the rent off the ground you own?
The lease that is on that property will remain in effect. The tower will go on a corner that is currently not irrigated, not part of what's under that vision. There was some consideration of property acquisition. The council did not believe the city could afford any of that. And chose not to pursue it.
Can we know the cost of pumping water uphill and letting it run back down?
That is a question I would pose to our engineers.
Because there is quite an elevation difference between here and Fairground.
Yes, there is, and that actually was a contributing factor. That water tower that will be out there will not be as tall as it would have had to have been had it been in town. The closer you get to town, the taller the tower has to be to address the water pressure issue.
So how do you address capacity?
The tank that will go out there will be 1 to 1.25 million gallon.
Not as tall, but more in diameter.
Yes.
So there wasn't any consideration of that, almost half an acre of city ground across from the courthouse and putting it on there. And then taking the old tower down.
That's county owned property.
It says city of Townsend.
City owns part of that park, but not all of it.
So
That's currently, that is also where one of the city wells is.
Mhm.
So you're looking for construction would no doubt have taken place on the county side.
But was there, did you look at an MOA between the county and the city to do that?
when the council was considering the options presented by the engineering firm, there wasn't, I don't remember, we're talking over 2 years ago now. I don't remember all of the discussions. I'm not sure that it or an MOU, memorandum of understanding was considered. Also remember that that's the Memorial Park. Or
Again, I don't want it to sound like that I'm against this, like it's, I want it to be a little bit more fiscally responsible, and that's where everything that I've said kind of derives from. I feel like it's a lot more expensive than it needs to be. And it's like putting it apart, if it saves the taxpayers of Townsend $5 million, or people might be up for that idea. You know, that's the thing is, we don't have the necessary information to make that calculated decision. That's what I'm personally a little disappointed about.
And I will remind all of you that the public hearing on the preliminary engineering report was publicly noticed. And not very many people attended, although there were some. And the options were considered not necessarily fiscally irresponsible who have made decisions.
Well, it's kind of like with the phased approach and like with, like it's like, is fire hydrant step one, fixing fire hydrants? Like that's kind of the questions that I'm having, you know, like, again, I understand it has to get done. I agree, it has to get done. But it seems like we're hasty looking for a let's get it going versus let's get it going correctly. And I'm a contracting officer. Like I understand this whole grand scheme of bidding and engineering and all that stuff. I get it. It's what I do for a living. I feel like it was a lot of looking at it in engineer report. Again, this is my assessment, so it may be inaccurate. But look at the engineers, like, okay, good engineers will take it. And then there's really nothing after that.
That is not accurate. We've had plenty of meetings with the engineers and asked a variety of questions. Certainly the minutes, the prior meetings that they were. And again, through this whole process, there are certain aspects of the project in its entirety that will take place. It's not all happening at once, which I'm sure you understand. One of the first elements that will go into place will be doing some upgrading on existing wells. Make sure that we are the structures themselves will be upgraded because they're in the that as well. And depending on when we are able to select funding, we have not gone out to bid yet. The plans are still being, engineers are still addressing comments from the Department of Environmental Quality. It's anticipated that sometime within the next month or so, we'll be ready to solicit bids. Anticipation that some work may be able to be done this year. The project is scheduled to be essentially finished by the end of 2025 with some finalization work, finishing touches, if you will, into 2026.
Thank you.
Heather Haley again. I just want to speak up for everyone that's here. In a lot of projects, it makes sense to do a phased approach. However, in a project like this, it will cost more to do a phased approach because of the state of disrepair that it sounds like our system is in. It's kind of all or nothing. Yeah, it's not going to all happen at once, but we can't pick one this year and then come back and do it again next year because ultimately the contractors selected will end up paying more money for the remobilizations. And what that means is when a contractor is selected and they come start doing the work, if they leave it and take everything away, all the equipment away, and then come back for phase two, that mobilization fee comes back into play. So it is actually fiscally responsible to take our water upgrade, attack it all at once, and just figure out how we're gonna pay for it. It sucks. We should have been working on this all along the way, but this is the hand we've been dealt, so unfortunately, I don't see how a phased approach can work in this situation.
Thank you. Angie, you have some information?
I do. So you were talking about the different options. This is a copy of the preliminary engineering report. It's in this office. You all are more than welcome to see it. And inside of it, it has the options that the council was presented, all 5 of them, all the different size tanks, where to put them, and all the information that was done for that. So if you were interested in seeing the options that were provided.
It's just here.
Yeah, and you can just ask Carrie for it, and she has it right over at her desk.
Probably just take a gander when we're-
Yeah.
when we're done here.
Yeah. It'll show you the options that were provided to the council for them to make a decision.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sue Fairchild, I'm wondering, has there been a lot of research? You mentioned, grant money. Is there any grant money in this budget? Have they been applied for and denied, or where can we get that information?
We can provide that to you through the funding sources. We have the ARPA money that the city was granted directly, the rescue plan money. The county did not have any eligible projects for a good share of its allocation of ARPA money and transferred it to the city for the purposes of this. There are some other smaller grants that the city was eligible for and received. Most of that money is, will be used in the preliminary work, engineering. As an example, the ARPA money has a deadline for expenditure, so we're using that first. Those gotta pay it back. There were other grant programs we explored, the city wasn't eligible. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And thank you all for coming out tonight and your questions and interest in the project.
Can I ask a question on another issue?
One moment, please. Give me a couple of minutes to get back to the council agenda. I'll open the council meeting now. Council has received the minutes from the July 2nd, 2024 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? If there are not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from July 2nd, 2024.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion from the council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. We'll now ask for any public comment on any matter that is not on this agenda, but that is under the city's jurisdiction, and who wanted to speak. Yes, sir.
Phil. I don't know how long it's been since the roads were paved out there, but it was a 20-year thing. When is that up?
I believe you're speaking to the SID, the Special Improvement District. Those,
It was a city thing.
yes. I will answer that question because it doesn't require vote of council. We have 2 years left on, there are 2 special improvement districts that we're paying the bonds on, and there are 2 years left on those payments.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other public comment? Yes, sir.
All right, now we got that. So we're making vast improvements to stuff. Okay, like I love it. It's awesome. So if we, by we, I mean, really you guys, like, so has there been a sit down and done like a strategic planning, like a 5, 15, 20 for the city moving forward?
We are, thank you, in the process of updating the growth policy, which, just to either inform or remind you all, the growth policy is a guiding document. It is not something that the city has to absolutely follow once it's adopted, but it will provide some assistance to the council in moving forward. It's a tool, if you will, to allow the city to be more proactive. We know that growth will take place, and it's better to be on the front end of that, proactive rather than reacting. And much of what is transpiring right now, I guess I would say, is more on the reactive side. So that growth policy is in process. And some other questions have come up recently, just to let you know that that would lead to those strategic plans, for example, of capital improvements. We are also cautious. Some of the issues that come up during budget meetings are, how much money are we going to spend on streets? How much money are we going to spend here? And I would offer an observation that probably our street maintenance, while not a formal document, was probably one of our better exercises in keeping ahead of those streets, keeping them maintained, so that we don't have to go out and say, all right, now we have to rip up all the streets and replace them, and congratulations, here is your assessment to those bonds. So the answer is a combination of yes and no.
Yes. So the planning board is actively in the middle of the growth policy right now. I can tell you that we sent out surveys. We had a really high response of 5%. We received over 101 surveys, so we were completely thrilled with that. And the planning board is actually meeting Thursday night. So if anybody's interested in participating in that, we strongly encourage you to do so. We're hoping to have that done and presented to council in September.
Other public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. Is Judy Gillespie here?
No, she canceled, so
Okay.
she will not be here.
Well, that was rapid. We'll move into the current business. First item is a transportation committee. As in, I believe, some preliminary report or.
Wow, I see. The purpose of the transportation committee is to work with the county and to work with the organizations at large. Development of passenger rail gets closer, so that we stay ahead of that and how it impacts the city and how the city might want to take advantage of the opportunity.
Thank you. And I believe council have probably asked me to contact the commissioners.
You were invited to keep
Yes.
up with what was going on until this committee got formed.
Thank you for that reminder. Ordinance Review Committee, Angie, do you have some
Yeah,
information
so,
for council?
I passed out a proposed city ordinance review for the year's request. I split it down into the next 3 years. This to not overwhelm anybody. I present that to the council for your review. And if we would like to form the ordinance review committee, I would make a motion that we do so. And I'm not stuck to this. This is just a suggestion. I would like to hear your comments and
You need something changed? I don't believe the public has a copy of this. Okay, just to let you all know, if I may interrupt your presentation, okay. I had suggested that council take a look at all of the city ordinances because there are a number of them that have not been reviewed in quite some time. The language is quite archaic. Those of you who do work for the state understand that state laws and regulations are often difficult to read and understand. There, over the last couple of years, have been a number of the sections of the ordinances that have been under review. One of them that is currently under review and being addressed is the animal ordinance section. Our compliance officer, Georgia, is doing some work on that. We have a fireworks committee that is looking at those sections. And the tree ordinances are also under some review, particularly in light of the fact that I believe the average participation on the tree board is 30-some years and they're not getting any younger. We're also looking at some new ordinance sections, an events ordinance and a telecommunications franchise ordinance. Existing ordinance, and that will pretty much take us through the end of this year and possibly into next calendar year. But next calendar year, our administration and personnel sections are intended to be looked at to include some pay matrix, council code of conduct and ethics, sewer and water ordinance update with respect to water rates. Currently, the city does not have a bulk water rate, and that is a consideration that council will look at. Yes.
Could you offer an explanation of what the intent of the water rate is?
Oh, sure. The bulk water rate would come into play, for example, when we have construction projects coming in and the contractors need water. We essentially meter the water that they draw from one of the hydrants and charge it a bulk rate. Right now. Under the current rate structure, we charge based on a commercial rate that has to do with the size of the line that's involved. So basically, when you people or companies filling up trucks. Health and welfare was on the list for 2025. Specifically, some of our disposal areas related to garbage. Garbage and solid waste are hot topics in our community these days. Buildings and construction and building inspection. Some of those code items are really old and difficult to understand. But would include things like, nobody's supposed to be taking care of their own right of way, the right of way in front of their property, kinds of things without permits. We've had some citizens take it upon themselves to fill potholes in alleys. That's a no-no. Primarily because in an effort to address what they see as an issue for them, they don't always think about the impact it has on some other residents. We've had a situation like that just recently, other residents or businesses. Then in 2026, business licenses and regulations, public peace, safety and morals, vehicles and traffic, specifically within the vehicles and traffic, which includes our parking regulations and parks. Suggested that the council look at urban camping and usage of city property. Thank you. Yep. So that's what that is. So ordinance review committee. I asked Angie as the president of the council. That's why I asked her if she would put together basically a roadmap for council to look at. And at this time, I would suggest perhaps that in our existing committees, as those topics come up, we ask those committees to participate in the review. Is there any comment or question from public? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Todd Rolfs, and I want to ask Angie a question about the fireworks ordinance.
Mhm.
Were there any incidents this year that required the fire department to have to address because of mishandling family fireworks and things like that? And also, are there any programs that maybe the Rotary Club provides, or maybe the city provides, as far as public awareness on how to handle fireworks, so that we don't have any kind of incident that involves the fire department?
I'm going to redirect you to Vivian, who is on the fireworks committee, they just had a meeting yesterday, so I would imagine that she would be able to better inform you as to what.
To answer your first question, were there any incidents this 4th of July that were caused by fireworks? We only had one in the city that was on the 2nd of July. That some citizens set off some fireworks and it tipped over and shot into some hay bales that ignited, and it got put out with a garden. So it was.
It was straw bales.
That was it. There were no, I think I checked with the sheriff, there was several noise complaints and things like that. There weren't any ambulance calls within the city that were caused by injuries. As far as fireworks safety and things like that, I don't know of any programs currently that Rotary or anyone else is doing. Certainly is a great idea. There's, stuff out there on social media just generally from different places. I know a lot of fireworks, or fire departments have posted things in the past. Our department used to post things. I don't know that there's anybody handling a lot of the social media anymore, as they're very short on volunteers in that arena.
We should discuss notification.
Yeah. And a lot of people just aren't even aware of the ordinances too, that as we saw on different social media forums, discussions, things like that. So
is there any way that the public newspaper could get involved with the fire department to help make a public awareness on the safety issues prior to the fireworks on July 4th or July 2nd?
it could be a discussion that we could have with the chief and the what now 43 is, and see if they, that's something that they can do. I think it's a great idea. Certainly pitch it. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Since we're on that topic, Vivian, would you like to go ahead and report on that committee meeting?
Yeah. So we met last night. We had one gentleman, Eric, and Mayor Rouser, who's pretty much the audience. We talked about a lot of things that we talked about from the last meeting. Maybe seeing about a neighborhood watch program to help with the sheriff department with enforcement and things like that. The sheriff department was not against the idea, but they said, well, the city, the watch people, it's kind of a whole nother worms with liability, and you don't want people taking matters into their own hands, and essentially they really can't enforce anything. They're just, for lack of a better term, cattle tails. And we talked about proximity to things, sizes of the fireworks, maybe limiting the mortars to, something along the decibel line that was not so damaging to ears and property. But yeah, basically we kicked a lot of cans around, and we're gonna
do a working meeting, figure out some wordy stuff for the lawyer to look at and for the public to review and talk about at the next meeting and see what fits for the city of Townsend. We haven't had a lot of people attend the fireworks ordinance meetings, but we've been holding them since
And publicly
April,
posted them.
May.
Going forward,
Yeah.
going forward in the rest of this year, there's gonna be some proposed changes to ordinances to kind of fine tune it a little bit. And we encourage the public to be involved in that. I mean, we're all ears about it because we're, again, trying to be a little bit proactive, not waiting till an incident happens, we should have had a policy in place or something. Last year when someone get hurt or someone's house get burned down or vehicle, whatever. So keep an eye on the paper. You can always come here to the city as well, because those are all public meetings. And we really encourage the public's input on just managing it a little bit better. It hasn't been, the ordinance is pretty vague currently, I think, as it sits. So it's not that we're gonna become fireworks police people, but I think we need to put some things in place to protect our community, still have a good time, still be patriotic, and do it in a safe manner.
Is there public comment with respect to the fireworks ordinance report?
It's on the safety part. I completely behind it's on the mortar issue. To make them safe, because I completely understand there are people out there that don't like the sound, but there are people out there that do like mortars. If we could get together and teach people the safety of them and securing them on boards so they're not toppling over, they can be a safe firework instead of shooting through people's windows or into their houses or cars or haystacks. And that wasn't even a mortar, that was a parachute.
Thank you. Vivian, do you have other information you'd like to share from the report? Okay, so basically where the fireworks committee is
We're gonna make another meeting.
they've received some public input, quite frankly, mostly on the side of outlining them entirely. That's where the most of the public comment has been. Important to also recognize that we have members of the community who are on the other side of the spectrum and just want a free-for-all. Government's all about balance. So the committee will put together some elements from the information received and continue the public participation in that. And as with every ordinance, once there is an ordinance presented to council and council says, yes, let's move forward with that, then there will be public hearing. Okay. The insurance premium and renewal council.
Procedure there.
Yes.
We didn't complete, we had a little tangent there. We didn't complete the ordinance review committee.
Oh.
And technically we didn't actually complete the process of forming the transportation.
That is true. You asked me to be the liaison with the county.
Until the committee is formed.
Until the committee is formed. Do you want to form that committee this evening?
I moved at the council form the transportation committee.
Is there a second?
That answers that question.
Motion dies for lack of a second. Council's not ready to form a committee yet. We'll keep that on the agenda. Carrie, did you catch that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. With respect to the ordinance review committee, just a reminder that it's acceptable to council as we get into each of those sections on the ordinances. Existing committees will handle it. If we don't have a committee on a particular topic, we'll create one.
We still open for discussion on the issue.
I can reopen that.
This is, I have no objection to that, but Angie, would you be willing to go through and indicate where it's appropriate? I love your schedule, by the way. I think this was a great effort.
Well, I tried not to go too in depth because I have my own notes and reading through the ordinances and I didn't want to give, pressure anyone into specific details of what needs to be changed in each ordinance. I felt it could be done in committees.
Would you be willing to go through that and note really quickly which existing committees could address which of your scheduled ordinances? So that we have an idea of where we need to fill those.
So I'm pretty sure that for the 2024 currently on the agenda, the fireworks, the tree ordinance that states at Vandenberg and tree law. The animal ordinance is ACO Georgia Wild. We have an event committee currently. And then we also have a telecommunications committee as well. I do believe that the administration and the personnel could be the committee that was established for the council code of ethics and conduct. Yes, we did. It was myself.
Yes, my apologies. It was last week.
The sewer and water committee is already the water, sewer and water is Vivian and myself, and since Valerie's position is vacant, there is a question mark there. I would suggest possibly that we wait until the new council member situation is taken care of to possibly include that new council member on the sewer and the water. Health and welfare. Since I specifically designated disposal areas in garbage, that committee is JB, Nate, and Doug. Buildings and construction would be regarding building inspection. I would probably recommend the planning board for that. Business licenses and regulations. In 2026, I would imagine that of the police safety and morals and the vehicles and traffic, I would say we would need to create committees when that comes.
Is it appropriate for a board versus a? Is that what?
Much of. Let me answer David's question first. Much of the work that lends itself in the implementation of the construction of the plan. So.
No, what is it? I'm just asking you about the organization. Is it appropriate for the board versus not the council?
I think it's just fine. Because nothing will happen until council anyway. So considering the amount of work that council now has in front of it, if you can move some of that to an organization that has more involvement with that.
Okay.
All right, moving right along. Yes. Oh, sorry, Dan.
It's quick. You said the next planning board meeting is on Thursday?
Correct. It should have been last week, but the staff was busy and didn't get some things done, so we moved it to this Thursday. It is 6:30.
At 6:30 here.
Okay, last meeting, council had asked us to, by us, I mean Carrie, to double check with our insurance agent as to whether she had considered a variety of companies to make sure that we got as good rates as we can. Julie has done that, and so you have in front of you the insurance proposal with the bill attached. That was before you left. And it is to, I would entertain a motion from the council to approve reviewing this insurance.
I will make a motion that we approve the new insurance.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the insurance that will be provided through Centennial Insurance here in Townsend. Is there any discussion from council? Any comment from public? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. With respect to the next item on the agenda is a moratorium as requested. Pardon me? Oh, yes. Apparently, I just don't want to fill that seat. I know what it is. I made a note and thought I had done it. So the open council seat is in Ward 1. To date, we have received one letter of interest that is from Heather Haley. And we have set a deadline of 1 o'clock on July 26th for anybody else to submit a letter of interest. The seat was vacated July 2nd by state law. We have 30 days to fill it. So with a response deadline for interested parties on July 26th, council has already scheduled a budgeting meeting for the 30th. I'm going to call a special meeting of council on July 30th at 6:30 for the purpose of filling the position. Okay. At a special meeting of council. Yes. That's the only piece of business we will talk about. It's filling that position.
That was the third.
The 30th at 6:30. Once that is done, we will go into the budgeting. Now, moratorium on the solicitor's licenses at the request of Rotary for the time period of Fall Fest. Current city ordinance 5.04.070 says the city council may authorize by resolution a temporary suspension of licenses or fees for licenses. To that, and actually, let me ask Adam Six if he would like to speak that.
No.
Are you going to speak up?
Only if I have to.
Okay. I would suggest pursuant to that section that council authorize a resolution for a temporary suspension of the solicitor's license for the week that includes the Fall Fest timeframe. See if I made it out here, September 29th through October 5th, for those vendors who are participating in Fall Fest.
Yeah, read that once more.
Sure. Pursuant to 5.04.070, which says the city council may authorize by resolution a temporary suspension of licenses or fees for license. So pursuant to that, council will suspend the licensing requirement and subsequent fees for those vendors participating in the Fall Fest. That period of time to be September 29th through October 5th.
The only thing that might work is suspend the fees. Suspend the operation of
Suspension of licenses or fees for license. Now it's up to council. So does that mean we suspend the temporary licensing fee of 4 days to their vendors, or do we suspend the licenses in general that includes anyone who purchased the license? if you limit the suspension to those vendors who are participating in Fall Fest. Any other vendor who chose to do business within the city. would still comply with all this. Because that's what I'm confused with this. I don't remember the last time. You guys said you would be open to the fact that not suspending this is the visitor's license unless the people that purchase annual licenses were directly in the vicinity of the event.
That's correct. We agreed, you know, if there was a geographical boundary or something that needed to be placed, we were in favor of it. I believe this is the 15th time we've asked for this moratorium. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, make anything complicated, change anything or prohibit anybody's opportunity. We're just trying to run a clean event.
It would seem obvious to suspend requirements of licensing within the boundaries of Fall Fest. That makes sense. The licensing is being dealt with by Fall Fest for their vendors. The city's collection of funds right that in that regard is in support of Fall Fest. That's great. I think the complication is how far outside of that region we're willing to stop people from setting up street vending, even though they go get a license. And that's the part that has me confused, because what Laura asked for at the last time when she spoke was the whole city.
No, the last time Laura was here, she stated that she would be open to vendors outside of the perimeter of Fall Fest.
And I guess that's the question is what's the definition of the perimeter of Fall Fest?
Right.
What?
So I.
Street closure is.
Well, and there's no street closure in the park. We don't request to close Pine Street, I don't think. We just, like,
That you do.
we've never been displaced from it, but Eric could this year.
You set up barriers in every previous year I've lived in this town on Pine Street.
We do, but I believe Laura asked for the street closure of Pine Street, but the event, you know, the only permit we ask for the event is, you know, the closure of the highway. But there's no formal definition of the event boundaries. So I don't know if that's
That's why
something
we've
we
got
need
an
to
event committee
consider.
trying to work out these details.
Right, I get that, I get that. And I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm trying to.
There
help.
is a request that impacts B Street.
Right.
And Pine Street. And I think part of C. No, C stays, C remains navigable, right?
Right,
But you've got entertainers and vendors set up on B Street and Pine Street. So to Councilman Howick's point, would you request a perimeter that would be? Did you continue down to be almost to Spruce last year with some vendors?
possibly, I think it was to the alley. I don't think it passed the alley.
To the alley, actually on South Pine, almost to Broadway. Correct.
The alley, once again.
To the alley.
But the circle that the event influences for parking is much larger than just for vendors. And I think that's the big concern is parking influence is probably my biggest priority going into this year's event.
And how does that impact solicitors' licenses?
It doesn't directly, that was just a side note.
So if council were to entertain a moratorium on solicitors' licenses for those participating, the vendors participating in Fall Fest, council could designate a perimeter that would encompass Heritage Park, Pine, part of the.
Just so long as council is aware of problems that have occurred and involved council last year. with the same vendor 2 years in a row. You know, Tim and Becky and their food truck, and I'm not part of that stuff, I'm not part of that committee. It was just, it was associated stuff with the event that I wasn't directly part of, but we try to have those fires put out in advance so they don't blow up for us on Friday night or Saturday morning. You know, because the perimeter for the event, 2 years ago was where they try to set up for the car show Sunday morning. So now we're talking about that street going, you know, north Pine as well as south Pine being influenced by the event. I think that's why Laura had made the comment of a half a mile and a half. If it needs to be circled from the event center, however the council wants to do it. We're just trying to do the same thing we've done before, but do it a little better since we ran this problem.
I believe part of my personal problem is that I have a difficult time telling a local business that they shouldn't operate somewhere in the city just because of an event. And you know, when we're talking about threatening parking, 1 food truck, 10 food trucks don't threaten parking, considering the number that come into the city as a whole. We love your event, but we've got everybody who wants to take advantage of the event. Is it less fair for the brick and mortars on Broadway to benefit from it, but TV's Diner, 3.5 more blocks further out, to not have a similar opportunity because they have a food truck? I don't personally believe that any local business operating as to be benefited by Fall Fest would undermine Fall Fest in the slightest degree. And so from my perspective, I think that a single block extended radius from your event so that you have reasonable management of the traffic in and out of your event is appropriate. But I don't believe 4 blocks, or much less the whole city, is. But that's my opinion.
Other comments from council?
You're saying 1 block.
Well, and I think that would solve the problem, because the area in which Adam is speaking, or the problem occurred last year, was directly next to Lakeside Distillery, is where they were trying to put up,
Right.
which
Allegedly.
yes. But that is where they stage for car show, and that's where that would have been a problem for Fall Fest.
2 years ago, not last year.
Oh, yeah, because, well,
Last year was a different.
yeah, sorry,
From my
time
perspective,
flies, yeah.
Broadway's closed, so you're extending out, for example, Pine in both directions to B Street and Second, but not including B Street and Second. That would be the whole block. In the case of the music event, you'd have Pine closed, so you'd be closed up to but not including Spruce.
Right.
That way, if you have local businesses that want to participate, they are at least 1 block away from the event itself.
Correct. I'm actually speaking of Sunday for car show. Where they have,
I see the same thing,
Yeah.
you know, Broadway versus my street. Yeah.
Is Fall Fest telling this local food truck that they cannot participate in? Or are they
Well, and I don't mean to talk about the incident to which we referred as a specific, this happened recently. Laura's goal is just that some individuals with a t-shirt truck or, you know, 1,000 rugs don't move in across the street and set up camp as a vendor right there. And undercut or undermine.
Can he get in the event? Like he does what everybody else does? Can he?
Yes.
No. They could, as a vendor, they could submit an application and go through the jury vendor selection list of, you know, this kind of food and this cuisine and this and that, and whatever else. Anybody would be welcome to do that. And she has a wait list, and I think the jury committee meets 3 times. So they tried to do it responsible with the
I'm just
event.
trying to make sure that.
Did that appropriately answer your question?
Yeah, and I'm just making sure that I know that a local person actually can sell.
And to my knowledge, she's made every effort to include local people in that event. Yeah. And I look, as a business owner, I shut my office down for 2.5 days because of that, plus a lot of other hours dedicated to that event. So anyway. I wasn't gonna talk. I wasn't gonna talk.
Mike,
Mayor Browser. Last year, the two situations that I had was people that didn't know or didn't want to put in for the show over here. They didn't want to go to these folks and get, put their name in, and they could have had it. They just didn't want to do it. And I told them that you can't get in unless you can't be in that thing if you are not, haven't got a, have gone through them. And that was all it was all about. That was it. They didn't want to, so I thought I'd let you know.
thank you.
I think that it's extremely confusing and that council doesn't have enough information at this time to make a decision. So I would suggest that maybe Adam and Laura can meet with a couple of council members so that we can hammer out what boundaries works for both parties. Is that feasible?
We can arrange that, and we are, what, less than 90 days on this event?
Yeah.
To clarify.
This is, I like Angie's idea, and I think that if we got together, we could work this out so that council could make a decision on the first August council meeting.
Yeah. But which committee would we meet with? Or is this like an ad hoc that nobody wants to second?
I will volunteer to sit down with
I'll
you.
gladly volunteer too.
There we go. We got the date.
President wrote his idea. You know that.
Angie, JB, and Vivian will put it in you and Laura.
Is it okay if I contact you or? would you-
Absolutely. You contact whoever and we'll all. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry you had to talk. Thank you for it.
Do I stay up or do I sit down? That's my next question.
Oh, that's funny. I'm not gonna step on the mayor's toes. She's got to
With
take this out.
respect to, so we've addressed the moratorium, there's also the issue of the dog policy, which at this time, I would reiterate, the council has authorized Rotary to use Heritage Park for its event, and therefore Rotary can establish the dog policy. Whether you can enforce it or not is another matter.
Right.
Okay. You also have access to, certainly during the day, like Friday, our compliance officer, and after hours, the sheriff's office.
Well, and I think that was the concern, was that does an event like Rotary that requests use of that park actually have use of the park and pseudo possession thereof? Last year, there was an individual that club members said, could you please remove your dog from the park? And the individual became hostile. And said, no, there's nothing I can do. And he respectfully said, okay, I'm gonna call the sheriff's office and ask them if they will help with this matter. And the sheriff's office said, there's no reason for us to be involved in this. And yes, I was there 10 years ago when an old man got told to go away because people were loitering in front of the ketchup and mustard table. So 911 was called there because an old man got told to buzz off. We're trying to clean up our act.
If I recall, when we first discussed this 2.5 months ago, we had very much the same discussion and concluded that council didn't actually have an action to take because as long as they did not contravene state law, that they did not loosen the laws, they could tighten them all they wanted.
I believe that's correct. I can verify that. Carrie, will you look back in the minutes to see what that discussion entailed?
I thought it was just discussion. I didn't think there was a consensus of our perception is the good perception of this part.
Let's look it up because I thought we had come to a conclusion that did not require us to pass a vote.
Yeah, I don't require an action. I just require that, well, maybe that's something the events subclause can consider including in the subclause.
Maybe we can have them.
Has Peter looked into that too or not? Well, the city council can't vote.
Shut up.
Thank you.
Vivian,
If the animal is a nuisance, the current ordinances cover that, and the ordinance officer can enforce the impound or the sheriff's office after hours. Right?
yes.
All right.
And our ask is just no pets in the event. We support licensed service animals, just no pets in the event.
Service animals aren't licensed.
The problem with that is anybody and everybody just slaps a
Sticker.
Amazon service dog.
And if they're that creative, that cuts our group down by 80%, so we're ahead of the war where we've been in the past.
Jamie,
I look forward to re-reviewing the minutes. Because I do believe that we concluded that you could set the policies as you felt necessary.
Okay,
That to create an actual ordinance, just because of how slow government works, there was no way to solve that problem.
we just want to keep people
authoritatively
safe.
for this event.
The problem circles back to enforcement. Who would actually enforce it? Being the former compliance officer. The compliance officer cannot enforce Rotary rules. The compliance officer can only enforce city ordinances. So we're right back to the same circle of enforcement is the problem with that. So, I mean, because what Adam needs is he needs. If that's the case, then they gotta figure out their own enforcement, because our compliance officer can't enforce the event rules, they can only
I
enforce.
recall discussing that too at the
Exactly,
second
yep.
meeting.
Yep,
That there was no problem with them creating their own enforcement efforts. That as long as they didn't loosen the rules, they were fine to escort people off the property, no problem.
Angie, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if, once Carrie finds that information, in the minute, maybe we could provide that to Adam and the Rotary when we have our first meeting with them. With the committee.
Nate, did you have anything to add? Doug, did you have anything to add?
I better not.
All right.
No.
All right. Let's see. With respect to the unfinished business, nothing on the dog kennel upgrade, cat ordinance, the events committee. With respect to the pool operation, that seems to be going along, continuing to go along quite well this year. I think we've got a great crew there, and good job. With respect to the Townsend water system project, we are, just to let council know, we are in the process of researching records to verify either ownership or easements with respect to wells 2 and 3. We haven't had much luck left at the clerk and recorder's office in terms of deeds, so we're exploring other options there. We still have garbage cans on Broadway.
There is an appropriate to make a motion to remove that from the unfinished business list. I think that's become a dead discussion.
Yes, we can remove it. I'm sure that it will. Well, it is, it's continual business to our public works crew. But in terms of a solution right now, we haven't been able to find one that
So may I just remove the cans?
No.
Could I,
Don't ask, don't get.
Some of them are already not even there.
could I ask that Eric at the next meeting to refamiliarize ourselves, because there's the issue of who dumps them, there was the issue of beautification, we had a number of discussions going on. Let's refocus this.
Right. We have no updates on the telecommunications franchise. Give JB a couple minutes to read those minutes. We're lucky tonight our technology worked. Oh, Vivian. Is the pool still set to close in August? Okay. Take this time to remind everybody of Slice of Summer on Thursday.
May I address that now?
Sure.
I know there's gonna be questions on how or what we're doing as far as allowing kids into the pool. To make sure that every kid has an opportunity to swim. There is actually a mathematically formula to keep the kids safe as they're in the pool on a number of how many people should be in there. The number comes out to being 22 and a half kids. I'm not proposing that we do that. I don't want to cut anyone in half. But
Shows them to do that.
right, that's right. But I talked with our staff, being it is a special event and everything else, we feel comfortable with allowing 40 kids in the pool at a time to go in and swim. We're gonna rotate those kids in and out roughly every 45 minutes. I asked for an additional lifeguard to be on duty, to be at the door, to make sure that the kids aren't just cutting in line, that they're actually going to the back of the line, getting in and then coming in, like that. I might be extremely naive in thinking this process is gonna work. However, first year, I wanna try that process to make sure that we kind of get that event rolling and go along with that. So anyway, that's why I came up with a number of 40 kids. And that's also my process of trying to make sure that every kid has an opportunity to swim. So, any questions from anyone behind me?
Whoa,
Yes, sir.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yes.
whoa, whoa.
Sorry, it's the mayor.
Let's
I was looking
follow
at you.
protocol. Adam,
Should the Rotary Club of Townsend expect a bill following the Slice of Summer event?
yes,
And are we billed per kid, 40 kids per 45 minutes? We're not, okay.
Just a flat rate.
I don't know, I've just gotten calls before about where did this bill come from, and I don't like bills and I don't like questions, and I was trying to gain what I could. If the anticipation is to do it same as last time, that's fine. But if something had changed, this is a great time to ask. So, okay, if you anticipate no change, perfect.
is there any further public comments? This time we'll just. Yes, sir.
One more thing, there's that vacant lots behind Massa Park, and it is a rodent fest in there. And like the public nuisance, like ordinance just kind of cover things like that, like it has to be clean kept, no weeds, yada yada, whatever the words are. Wondering if there's any way that can be done, because I keep thousands and thousands of pounds of grain in the back of the distillery, and it's a problem. You have no idea how much spray foam I've gone through back there. So when it was cleaned up, there was a significant reduction in like mice. And then I heard there was like a giant ass snake that's living in there now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I mean, if someone wants to go find that, get your crocodile hunt around, go for it.
Probably
But
not as many mice back there then. Right.
appreciate it.
With
Yeah.
dinner.
So I don't know if there's something that can be done. If they just mow it, like, and just keep the grass down, that would be fantastic.
We can attempt to contact the property owner who does not live here.
I appreciate that. They could have a little bit more clout if it came with the city of Townsend letterhead.
Baby,
Thank you. Other public comment? JB, what did you find out?
We're gonna need to do a little bit more research. What Terry found was the very first presentation by Rotary, when they first proposed Fall Fest. At that time, according to the minutes, she also stated that we need to ask the animal control officer and the sheriff to shed light on the no dog policy at Fall Fest. JB made a motion to accept the Rotary's proposal for Fall Fest with the exception of further discussion on the moratorium and the no dog policy at Fall Fest. Nate seconded and it was Terry. And then Terry found the last presentation we had when Laura spoke. There's one in the middle where we actually had a discussion on the dog policy. And we haven't found those minutes yet.
Is that dated 4/30 and 5/21?
The first one was April 2nd, the last one was June 4th, but I guess it's going to be the second council meeting in April.
This is my first time here this year, proud to say. The second time, today's second time.
We will continue to research on the dog policy and see what the city can do to facilitate the no pets policy. Carrie, do you have anything for council tonight?
No, I do not.
Okay, Eric, do you have any other items that you'd like to talk about? Okay. Nate, do you have anything?
No.
Angie? No. Doug? Vivian? JB?
No.
And I would just let council know that I will be out of town tomorrow through Friday, technically through part of Sunday. I am accessible by phone. I may not be able to answer immediately, but we'll get back to you if you need to be.
I make motion. I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to be here tonight.
All the budgets. Good job. I know.
Like, right.
Way to stay ahead of the game.
Like, I'm sorry, yeah, like also income.
Blew up her email. You're like in front of air conditioner.
I was dying. I was dying.
Yeah. All good.
I will, I maybe just a short bit of. I'll be the Thursday all day. Thursday, Friday. Yeah, I'll be here Thursday, Friday.
I'll holler at you.
All right.
that was fun.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Last night?
That's fun. Good line.
It was a good one, huh?
Good to be here tomorrow.
They'll be here tomorrow?
But yeah.